Klobuchar. Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sputkovsky, what would you say this legislation's about? What do you think the goal of this legislation is?
Well, bringing back preclearance is to give the very partisan bureaucrats inside the voting section where I first worked when I got to the Justice Department, basically control over state elections. And a lot of groups don't want to have to go to court like other litigants and actually prove a case, prove discrimination. They would rather be able to call their friends and former colleagues who are now working in the voting section say, you know, we really don't like this particular bill, you should object to it. And that's the kind of thing that Ms. Reardon and I saw happening when we were there.
Ms. Reardon, you gave examples of this part of the Department of Justice being sanctioned. You know, in simple terms, it seems to be that people in this section are more on a political crusade than they are enforcing the law. Is that a fair statement?
That's definitely a fair statement. My very first day in the section, when I was being walked around and introduced, there were political, campaign type signs for the Gore-Lieberman ticket. It was in the year 2000. Obviously, infraction of the Hatch Act. When Barack Obama won the election in 2008, I come in very early in the morning. Somebody had smashed the picture of George W. Bush and taken a picture of Barack Obama out of like the newspaper and pasted it to the frame. There is, if they don't like the politics of a particular state, they target them. There were signs on doors that said "mess with Texas." It is very, very political. I was shocked at how political it is.
Yeah, well, I guess we shouldn't be. Are you familiar with the case of Kim OGG? I can't say her last name. I don't want to butcher it. The Democratic District Attorney in Harris County, Texas. She went to vote, but she was turned away because her ballot had already been cast. Are you familiar with that?
I heard about that on the news.
Yeah, so this is the district attorney for a county in Texas. So the idea that we want to preserve the integrity of the ballot box, I think, is real. Mr. Sputkovsky, at the end of the day, the Supreme Court decision regarding pre-clearance was based on evidence that states in question had advanced. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And in fact, remember, Section 5 was put in when voter registration and turnout of African Americans in the covered states, places like Alabama. I mean, look, they were the subject of systematic, widespread discrimination. So their registration turnout rates were extremely low. But when the Supreme Court got this decision, Congress wanted to renew this bill based on 40-year-old data. They didn't want to renew it based on current registration and current turnout rates, because if they did, not only were the covered states as good as uncovered states, many of them were far superior. I just did a study on this, and for example, in the 2016 election, every one of the formerly covered states, with the exception of Texas, had a higher registration rate than the state of New York. In the 2020 election, 6 of the 9 pre-clearance states had higher registration than New York, and 4 had higher turnout. New York, as you know, never been covered, but the point is, there's no longer any radical difference between the formerly covered states and the rest of the country. In fact, they do better than many other states.
So if the data is that clear, then why are we trying to do what we're doing, Ms. Reardon?
I believe we're trying to take the states' rights from them and federalize all elections and hand a lot of those decisions to partisan bureaucrats within the Department of Justice.
I think you're right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank all of the witnesses who are here with us today.